Greetings, my fellow warriors, boy Meckanimal, and today we're going to discuss the topic of intensity versus volume versus intensity, whatever you want to call it, and however order you want to put it, not that it matters. And it's a raging topic nowadays, notably between the coach, the infamous coach Greg Doucette, and Jeff Nippard, another popular YouTube channel, and lately between Mr. Israetel, Dr. Mike Israetel, if I spell it right, get involved as well. And there's been a debate on Umar Issouf's channel between Coach Doucette and Mike Israetel. So it's stemming from, the debate stemming from two different school of thought, where one, Mr. Mike Israetel is is vouching for keeping repetition in reserve when performing sets, while Doucette, he's all about that old school mentality, go hard or stay at home. And his claim is that most people don't train hard enough. And is it true? And that he's a proponent of training to failure. So he would like everybody to train to failure, and that once you reach that failure, you could lower your rep, the intensity of the load by 10%, and try to hit it again. And once you can't perform this at the same rep count, it will possibly mean that you reach failure and you're done for the day. While Mike Israetel is going for an established amount of rep and sets, properly and methodically sets for you to follow, so that you can improve slowly and steadily. And I will go for, I may have a bias because I like the guy, the way he carry himself and the way he tell you how it is, Greg Doucette. But I'm kind of a hybrid, because I believe in training hard, really hard. And before I even got to start involving the science of strength training and coaching into my training, I was more like Greg Doucette. I had no specific protocol. I would just go hard, and the key point was to avoid injury, and which is what it comes down to. I strongly believe that involving science in your training routine will be for you to save time, one, because we don't have that much time on earth, and you don't want to spend your whole life experimenting stuff when there's been great coaches out there that have collected data for like decades and came up with some scheme that's known to work. So it's just stupid to waste your time and be like, nah, I'm just gonna go by what works for me and this and that. You should go with what works for you, but wouldn't it be great to steal the ideas of people who's dedicated their whole life doing certain thing, and we know that they work, and now you can custom those things to fit your goals. This is where science can come up really handy, exercise science and all these things. But you have this this category of people who are science-based, who just go by study, measure, and that this kind of thinking force the newbies to waste the time measuring in minors instead of working on the basics and getting a good strength base. They waste the time hopping from program to program because they heard of this study or this other study. So I'm kind of a hybrid in between both, but if I were to choose one, I will be more of training to fucking failure, pushing that intensity, which I don't do. I don't train to failure because, like I mentioned in one of my previous videos, I don't like the pump, because the moment you reach the pump, which means you must likely train to failure, then your workout is done. Because I figured out what works and I know where I'm heading, I just found like a good hybrid in between training really hard and keep something in stock for you to to go hard the next time. So I do concur with Mr. Mike, Dr. Mike, because science as it needs to be. But don't get lost into data, and trying to demean other people stance on certain protocol just because you have a higher level of intellect in terms of in your field, which all of us do in our field. We dedicate a certain amount of time mastering and refining our craft. So it's definitely the demeanor of being of feeling looking condescending whenever you debate somebody that's may not have the same level of dedication and research and all this thing. You need to be open-minded. So this is where I guess my bias can be felt during the debates between Greg Doucette, because during the whole thing it just felt like Mike Israetel was being a little condescending, and because I read the comments and people say it may have just been due. It is due to the way he always carry himself. I don't follow him specifically. I've heard of him here and there because I follow Umar. So it's not somebody that I really know that much. So that would be to be fair to him and not judging him. But I just felt like. The thing is, whatever we perceive from the debates, and at least that I perceive, and other people, most people perceive, there had to be a pattern with whatever we all observe, and that the way he was just carrying himself, he just felt like he is superior to Greg, and that and in that manner, thinking of Greg, making him look like an idiot, stuff like that. So, like I said, each of them, they have a point, but the reality is, which leads us to the topic itself. Do people train hard enough? I believe people don't train hard enough. Yeah, and here is why. Because I'm a personal trainer myself, and spending time in gyms, I can tell that most people, they don't train hard enough for the only reason that they don't really know what they're doing. That's the whole basis of it. If they knew what they're doing, how to go about it, they would know how to train hard enough and be smart about it, and be able to accomplish, reach the goal that they were aiming for. But the sad part is most of them don't, and there's so much information nowadays on the internet that people just get lost in hanging on to their favorite fitness personality routine, when actually, if they knew that they understood the principle of training, strength training, they could just keep it simple and just stay consistent with it. And that's just what it is. People don't train hard enough, and Greg is right. Greg says is right. People train like pussies. Then you have the other extreme, that people who train really hard but really dumb. They train so hard that they break form, and you can see injury like lurking around, and you can't really help them, because that type of person, you get involved and you try to correct them, you turn around from experience, they're back to doing the same crap that they're doing. So I've made a resolution not to really bother people who don't pay me anymore. And I know it sounds really weird and selfish, but I've helped so many people trying to correct them, but it just feels like an insult that whenever you turn it around, they're back to doing the same crap they were doing. So you feel like you just wasted the time. So for a few years now, I don't really bother anymore unless you really seek for help. And that's that. Yeah, train hard but smart, and like to lean toward Mr. Mike Israetel as well. Yeah, training methodically has its need to be, because you want to train hard but be methodic about it, and then peak to your destination in a safe manner. The only problem with the way Greg would train, unless you're being coached by him, is that you will train hard, but when is it that you're training too hard? It could be hard to know as a beginner, and you can injure yourself. That's the only flaw that I see in the principle of Greg Doucette. But other than that, with the 10% thing that he suggested, if you manage to hit that load with the proper rep count, and you don't hurt yourself, and you just fail, and you lower your weights and try to go again, and you don't hurt yourself, hey, it's going to work. Because the reason why people who with no programming, who just go on the fly, the reason why they're able to make great progress is because they train just randomly so hard and manage to not injure themselves. So if you train to failure and can play around and manage not to get hurt, shit, you will be really, really strong. The whole point of having a program is to manage fatigue and recovery, but still the intensity should be pretty pretty dialed in. And the one thing I like about bodyweight training is, yeah, you really will have to put intensity into it whenever you train. Otherwise it's really hard to learn skills. And in my case, for example, I even had to rely on a great friend of mine coaching for a few months, because at some point I was wondering if I was training it hard enough, and I kind of got lost in the whole flow of training, because I was training so hard and it was really hard to see results. So after that time, I just felt like, okay, now I'm gonna try this thing and see if I'm really training hard enough. And it happened that I was really training hard enough. It's just that certain thing would not happen. It would have taken me just committing much more longer than I was willing to commit to get the results. So yeah, a basic example would be like the rep rest, for example. We know usually that when you're training for a certain intensity, you got to take a longer break, right? But I've done such thing for a certain amount of time, and given that the results were not still there, for me to go super hard, I had to cut down, for example, the resting time into 1 minute as opposed to 3 or 5 minutes that I used to do, and it did work. I just increased the intensity by so much higher intensity, so much higher level, that my body had to yield the gains. So it's just that, like, it's not black and white, and science is good. It gives us a guideline. It set us a path, but the path is not perfect. Sometimes you have to overreach, and that's where that training to failure could come handy, like Greg said. And I had to use that a lot. For most part of my training, I like to hang in that overreach area, and that's the training to failure that Greg Doucette is mentioning. And the amazing thing about the body is, when you spend a long time enough with the overreach, your body kind of get acclimated to it, and you're used to that overreach state, and it's not so much of a hindrance anymore after a while. I don't suggest everybody to hang in that overreach zone, but it can be a handy handy mindset to have once in a while, to go for that overreach, which means really push past the boundary. And then what happens is you deload hard, you rest hard after that, and then what happens, bang, it's just tremendous gain, and feeling like a superhero, because all the gains that come make you feel like I don't know how to explain that feeling, because the gap from that overreach deep to that super compensation is just so overwhelmingly huge and humongous, that sometimes you feel like that's the way to go. But I would not suggest that, because being in the fatigue zone all the time can be really detrimental. And for me, fitness is my profession, so I can afford to do so. For a lot of you guys who have other job, and especially labor jobs and demanding job, it can be a problem if you want to play that game of Russian roulette, being on the overreach zone. So it's just a little bit to give you a picture of why I'm leaning toward Greg Doucette more than I do to Mike Israetel, because I can relate more to him, and I know he does work, and his message can be comprehended and understood better than Mike, because Mike is too technical in terms, and if you're not really into it like us, you will not understand it, and sometimes you get too lost in the technicality that you forget the substance itself. That's fucking hard work. So yeah, that's pretty much where I stand on it. So I do like Greg Doucette content, and not all he says I agree with, but the one thing I know that we all agree on is that hard work and consistency pays off. And he may have he may have not studied much, strength training protocols, because I've read a number of some coaches, protocol and stuff like that, just to have an idea of how to go efficiently and not waste my time. And you can tell in the way that he explained things that he doesn't grasp those things, but based on his own experience, and he's an accomplished person in terms of whatever he does, powerlifting, strength, and bodybuilding. So he knows what he's doing, that's for sure. So you can't really just look at him and be like he's spewing some nonsensical stuff and yelling at the camera and not take it for the value that he should bring to us. He does know what he's doing. He may not know everything. He says that himself. So for him to be out there and be frank about it like that, you can't just go. You can't just. You cannot just not concur with him. And yeah, most people don't train hard enough. And in my stance, whenever you advance, you definitely need to be hanging in that overreach zone. Otherwise, especially for a hard gainer, because everything I've accomplished in calisthenics, I've had to hang in that overreach level. Because if I was to go about the classic mumbo jumbo calisthenics experts tutorial and that's going on there, I will not have the result that I have, because this is the reason why I wasted my time, because following the classic basic protocol of progression and how to go this and this, it didn't work out so well. For somebody my size and with my lower body size, I'm a specific entity, and I had to go about different protocol and had to rely on other discipline programming style that I combined to come up with something that I know will shock my body to adapt. And that's pretty much what I wanted to share today. I've been watching a lot of that Doucette, intensity. I know that they're dragging it because it's a nice topic and people are caught up with get caught up with the whole antics, and it gives a lot of views, which is the reason why I thought I would make this video and get some views too. Why not? And in case you don't know me, I'm Meckanimal, and coach athletes, everything. You can check the channel and see what I stand for and what I go by, and that's about it, man. Get with the program. Everything is and will always be the Meckanimal way. You get your beanies for the winter time, you get your shirt for summertime, and peace, salutes. Train hard, man. Train hard. Harder, like Greg says, and may the struggle be overcome. Peace.